Welcome to the video tutorial for Kong, a primary resource on Confucianism. I will go over the source information, some vocabulary, and then read the document. So right here is the MLA citation. So Kung Chu, the Analects of Confucius, a philosophical translation, printed in New York in 1999. So even though this is printed in 1999, it is of a primary source. And here's some information about that source. Confucius sought philosophical and practical solutions to the problems of government, with the hope of creating unity and stability. His conversations about the subject were compiled in the Analects, a collection of 20 books, each book divided into chapters. And then here in the brackets, you can see an example right here. So the first number in the bracket represents the book, and the second number represents the chapter. When you're studying the evidence, you do not need to include that information, but what you do need to include is the author's last name. This is part of MLA's citation. So if you are taking an excerpt from this text, at the end of each evidence, you'll put Kong. We're about ready to get started reading, but first I would like to go over some vocabulary, and that is found in the slide presentation. So I'm going to go there now. Kong, vocabulary. Measure. As a noun, it means a planned action. Regulate. Control. Virtue. Noun, morally good behavior or character. Propriety. It's an adverb, meaning behavior that is acceptable as socially or morally correct or proper. It's connected with politeness. Qi Kong is a proper noun, meaning it's a person, and he was a ruler who controlled the region of Lu and asked Confucius for advice. So you'll see him in the reading. I am back on page 7 of the DBQ packet. Remember, as we just read in the source note, that the goal of the Analects were to really solve the problem about government, and that helps you be able to answer the question about which ancient Chinese philosophy most benefits society. Because as you're reading this, you'll want to think about, like, do you believe in this philosophy? And do you believe that this philosophy actually helps society and people? Okay, let's begin. Confucius said, "Lead the people with governmental measures and regulate them with laws and punishment, and they will avoid wrongdoing, but will have no sense of honor and shame. Lead them with virtue and regulate them by the rules of propriety, and they will have a sense of shame and, moreover, set themselves right." So in that first paragraph, I used 3 different highlights in order to divide the ideas. So in yellow, we have ideas that Confucius does not value. He does not think that governmental measures, laws, punishments are helpful. They avoid people from doing bad, but Confucius values honor and shame more. So he advises leaders to lead with virtue, having to do with politeness, and we also see this rules of propriety. So he's valuing politeness because he thinks if a leader does that, then individuals will acquire a sense of shame, and that shame is what allows people to lead more correct and proper lives, according to Confucius. Paragraph 2, remember this name we saw in the vocabulary. So he was a ruler of a region in China, and he is asking Confucius for advice on government. Qi Kong asked Confucius about government, saying, "What do you think of killing the wicked and associating with the good?" Confucius replied, "In your government, what is the need of killing? If you desire what is good, the people will be good. The character of the ruler is like wind, and the people is like grass. In whatever direction the wind blows, the grass always bends. In the second paragraph, in the conversation between the leader and Confucius, you can see that Confucius very dismisses and sees no need for killing, because a good leader is someone who desires and demonstrates good character. He creates that comparison between the wind and the citizens, being that the wind is the leader, the citizens are the grass, and the grass just goes wherever the leader directs, essentially. And the best way to direct, he's saying, is by desiring and showing goodness. Third paragraph. Confucius said, "If a ruler sets himself right, he will be followed without his command. If he does not set himself right, even his commands will not be obeyed." In the third paragraph, Confucius continues to emphasize the value of being right. He says a ruler who sets himself right. When he talks about right, he's talking about these values of virtue and shame and propriety. So those are the things that Confucius honors in an individual. And he believes that if a ruler himself is morally good, then people will obey. And he says they will not only just obey because he's commanding, but they will obey without command, which I think is a very strong statement. In contrast, if somebody is not morally good, people won't even obey. I am now on the bottom of page 7, looking at the document analysis questions. A reminder, as bolded here, that you will submit these answers on Schoology. And the first question is, what do people lose if they live in a society with a lot of punishment? So that's up in that first paragraph. How does a leader get people to be good? That's the answer to that is also kind of definitely in the first paragraph, but a little bit throughout. What is a sign of a strong leader? You can find that in the third paragraph. Question 4. Would you want to live in a society based on Confucianism? Why or why not? Provide one example. So think about, do you think that this type of society would be pleasant? And if so, provide an example of evidence from that source. So maybe put in quotes something or paraphrase something that you think makes Confucianism a strong philosophy and that is good for society. Wonderful. You are now ready to go to Schoology. Make sure you submit those answers and you can move on to the next source. Thank you.